I'd spent months planning my son Kevin's graduation party. Every detail was meticulously arranged, from the elegant venue overlooking the Hudson River to the champagne toast I would give to celebrate his achievements. After raising him alone for 23 years, while building my legal career, this moment felt like the culmination of everything we'd worked for together. My son, graduating with honors from Columbia Law, following in my footsteps but already showing promise of surpassing my own accomplishments. The morning of the party, I woke up with a sense of pride so overwhelming that I found myself crying while getting dressed. I chose a midnight blue dress that had cost more than I would normally spend, but this day deserved something special. Kevin had moved into his own apartment last year, so I drove alone to the venue 3 hours early to oversee the final preparations. "Ms. Reynolds, everything is arranged exactly as you requested," said Daniel, the event coordinator, as he guided me through the space. The room was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the Manhattan skyline. White roses and blue hydrangeas adorned every table, and the dance floor gleamed under crystal chandeliers. I nodded, pleased but still scrutinizing every detail. And the music, the playlist I sent over, all set with the DJ. First dance at 8:30, just after your toast, as planned. This was important to me. Kevin and I had always shared a tradition of dancing together at significant moments, from awkward middle school father-daughter dances, where I played both roles, to his high school prom send-off. These moments were our way of acknowledging how far we'd come together. Tonight's dance would be special, a symbol of completion, before he began his own independent life. Guests began arriving at 6. My colleagues from the firm, Kevin's friends from school, a few distant relatives. I greeted everyone with practiced warmth, accepting congratulations while keeping one eye on the entrance. Kevin had texted that he was running late, but would arrive with time to spare before dinner was served. When he finally walked in at 7:15, I felt a momentary jolt of surprise. He wasn't alone. A young woman I'd never seen before walked beside him, her hand comfortably entwined with his. She was striking, tall, with auburn hair cascading down her back, wearing a simple green dress that somehow made her stand out in the crowd of expensive attire. "Mom!" Kevin's face lit up as he embraced me. "Sorry we're late. Traffic was insane. This is Eliza. Eliza, my mother, Catherine." The young woman extended her hand with a warm smile. "It's wonderful to finally meet you, Ms. Reynolds. Kevin speaks so highly of you." I took her hand, momentarily speechless. Finally meet me? How long had they been together? Why hadn't Kevin mentioned her before? "The pleasure is mine," I managed, my lawyer's training helping me maintain composure despite my confusion. I wasn't aware Kevin was bringing a guest. Something flickered in Kevin's eyes. Embarrassment, perhaps, or concern. I thought I mentioned it. "Eliza and I have been seeing each other for a while now." 8 months, she added helpfully, seemingly unaware of my discomfort. 8 months. My son had been in a serious relationship for 8 months and hadn't told me. We spoke at least twice a week. How had this never come up? Before I could process this information, Daniel appeared at my elbow, discreetly informing me that dinner would be served in 5 minutes, and asking if we were ready to be seated at the head table. Throughout dinner, I struggled to focus on conversations around me. Kevin and Eliza sat together across the table, occasionally whispering to each other and laughing quietly. I found myself studying her, the way she listened attentively when others spoke, how she gently touched Kevin's arm when making a point, her evident ease in this room full of strangers. She was working as a waitress at an upscale restaurant while finishing her master's degree in social work, I learned when someone asked. Not the partner I would have chosen for my son, but she seemed intelligent and genuine. At 8:25, Daniel caught my eye, signaling it was time for my toast. I stood, glass in hand, and the room quieted. 23 years ago, I began, my voice steadier than I felt. I made a promise to myself and to my newborn son that I would give him every opportunity to succeed in this world, no matter what sacrifices that required of me. As I spoke about Kevin's determination, his brilliance, his compassion, I watched his face. He was smiling, but there was something hesitant in his expression, his eyes occasionally darting to Eliza beside him. I concluded my speech to applause, raising my glass. To Kevin, my greatest accomplishment and deepest joy, may your future be everything you deserve. After everyone drank, the DJ's voice came over the speakers. And now, the traditional mother-son dance. I set down my glass and moved toward the dance floor, heart suddenly lighter. This moment, at least, would be as I had imagined it. But as I reached out my hand toward Kevin, something unexpected happened that would change everything about this night, and about my understanding of my relationship with my son. As the first notes of our song began to play, I didn't yet realize I was about to face one of the most humiliating moments of my life. I extended my hand toward Kevin, smiling as our song, Louis Armstrong's "What a Wonderful World," filled the room. The guests formed a circle around the dance floor, phones raised to capture the moment. Everything was perfect, exactly as I had choreographed it. Then it happened. As Kevin stepped forward, Eliza suddenly moved between us. With a swift, subtle motion, she pushed my outstretched hand away. The gesture wasn't aggressive, but it was unmistakable. Before I could react, she turned to Kevin and said loudly enough for those nearby to hear, "Your mother looks tired. Why don't you let me lead this one?" The room seemed to freeze. I stood there, hand still partially extended, a smile fixed on my face that felt increasingly brittle. Kevin looked from Eliza to me, conflict clear in his expression. I expected, no, I was certain, that he would politely correct her, explaining the tradition and its importance. Instead, he hesitated for just 2 seconds too long, then turned to me and asked, "Would that be okay, Mom? You've been on your feet all day with the preparations." The concern in his voice seemed genuine, but all I could focus on was the fact that he was choosing her suggestion over our tradition, a tradition he knew meant everything to me. "Of course," I heard myself say, lawyer's poise taking over again. "You two enjoy the dance." On biche, I retreated to the edge of the floor as Kevin took Eliza in his arms. The guests looked confused, a few exchanging glances, but soon their attention was on the young couple moving gracefully across the floor. They were beautiful together, I had to admit, perfectly in sync, as though they'd danced together many times before. "White wine, Ms. Reynolds." A server appeared at my elbow, offering a glass that I accepted gratefully. I took a larger sip than was elegant, needing something to occupy my hands and dull the sharp edge of humiliation. "They make a lovely couple," said a voice beside me. I turned to see Sarah Chen, one of my oldest friends and a partner at a rival firm. Her expression was sympathetic, making me wonder how transparent my feelings were. "Yes, they do," I agreed, keeping my voice neutral, though I'm surprised Kevin never mentioned her before. Sarah's eyebrows rose slightly. "Never? That's unusual. Apparently they've been together 8 months. Ah, that single syllable carried volumes of understanding. Sarah had known me since law school, had witnessed my journey as a single mother determined to give Kevin everything while building my career. She knew how close I'd always believed Kevin and I were. Across the room, I noticed Daniel watching the dance with a concerned expression. Our eyes met briefly, and he gave a small, apologetic shrug. He'd been following my precise instructions for the evening. This deviation wasn't his fault. As the song ended, applause broke out. Kevin and Eliza separated, both smiling broadly. Then, instead of coming to me as I expected, Kevin took the microphone from the DJ. "Thank you all for coming tonight to celebrate this milestone with me," he began, his voice confident in a way that made me suddenly painfully aware that my son had grown into a man when I wasn't looking. "I'm especially grateful to my mother, who sacrificed so much to give me every opportunity." The guests applauded again, many glancing my way with admiring smiles. I acknowledged them with a nod, trying to focus on Kevin's words rather than the lingering sting of being sidelined. "But tonight, I have another reason to celebrate," Kevin continued, and something in his tone made my stomach tighten. He turned to Eliza, taking her hand. "Some of you have just met Eliza tonight, but she's become the most important person in my life. The room grew silent, anticipation building. I gripped my wineglass so tightly I feared it might shatter. A week ago, Eliza agreed to marry me. Gasps and exclamations of delight erupted around the room. People began to applaud again, more enthusiastically now. Someone whistled. Through it all, I stood perfectly still, the words echoing in my mind. Agreed to marry me. Marry me. My son is engaged. Engaged to a woman he had never even mentioned to me until tonight. We wanted to wait until after graduation to share the news, Kevin was saying, his arm now around Eliza's waist. But being here tonight, surrounded by everyone who matters to us, it felt right to tell you all now. Everyone who matters to us. The phrase stung. I was supposed to be the person who mattered most to Kevin, had always been, through every challenge and triumph of his life. When had that changed? How had I missed it? The crowd surged forward to congratulate the couple. I remained where I was, trying to arrange my features into an expression of maternal joy and pride. Inside, questions tumbled over each other. Why had Kevin kept Eliza a secret from me? Why announce their engagement at an event meant to celebrate his graduation? And why, this question burned hottest, had he allowed her to push me away from our dance? Through the crowd, I caught sight of them accepting congratulations. Eliza was showing off a ring now, simple but elegant, a single emerald rather than a diamond. Kevin was beaming beside her, looking happier than I could remember seeing him in years. Sarah reappeared at my side. "Did you know?" I shook my head, not trusting my voice. "Catherine," she said gently, "you need to go congratulate them." She was right, of course. Already people were glancing my way, perhaps wondering at my reaction. I handed my glass to Sarah, straightened my shoulders, and made my way through the crowd toward my son and his fiancée. As I approached, Kevin looked up, a flash of uncertainty crossing his face, before being replaced by hope. Eliza turned too, her smile faltering slightly as she met my eyes. "Congratulations," I said, embracing my son. "I'm so happy for you." The words came out smoothly, practiced from years of courtroom performances when I needed to convey conviction regardless of what I actually felt. When I pulled back, Kevin was studying my face intently. "Really, Mum? You're okay with this?" There was something in his question, a weight, an implication, that suggested he expected me not to be okay with it. But why? Because he'd kept Eliza's secret? Because she was a waitress rather than a lawyer or doctor? Or was there something else I was missing? "Of course I am," I said, turning to Eliza. "Welcome to the family." I hugged her as well, breathing in her light floral perfume, feeling the slight tension in her body as she returned the embrace. When we separated, her expression was polite but guarded. "Thank you, Ms. Reynolds. Your approval means everything to Kevin." There it was again, that strange undercurrent, as though my approval was unexpected or in question. "Please call me Catherine," I said, maintaining my smile. The DJ started playing again, this time an upbeat song that drew people to the dance floor. The moment passed as guests resumed celebrating, but as I moved away, I couldn't shake the feeling that something significant was happening beneath the surface of this evening, something I didn't understand yet. Daniel appeared at my side, professional mask firmly in place. "Ms. Reynolds, would you like me to have the kitchen bring out the cake now, or would you prefer to wait?" I glanced back at Kevin and Eliza, now surrounded by his friends from law school, all laughing together. My son caught my eye briefly and gave me a small, almost apologetic smile, before turning his attention back to his friends and his fiancée. "Let's wait," I said quietly. "I think there have been enough surprises for the moment." The remainder of the evening passed in a blur. I performed all the expected duties of the proud mother, cutting the cake with Kevin, posing for photographs, thanking guests as they departed, all while maintaining the composed smile that had served me well in countless difficult depositions and tense negotiations. By the time the last guest left, just after midnight, my face ached from the effort. Only a small group remained. Kevin and Eliza, a few of his closest friends who were helping the staff with cleanup, and me. I sat at what had been the head table, now partially dismantled, watching my son laugh with his friends as they gathered discarded glasses onto trays. "Miss Reynolds," it was Eliza, approaching with 2 cups of coffee. "I thought you might need this." I accepted the cup, surprised by the gesture. "Thank you. And please, I meant it when I said to call me Catherine." She hesitated, then sat in the chair beside me. "I owe you an apology," she said quietly, fingers wrapped around her own cup. "For earlier, the dance. I shouldn't have intervened like that." I studied her face, trying to read beneath the apology. "Why did you?" Eliza looked down at her coffee, then back up at me with a directness I hadn't expected. "Kevin was afraid." "Afraid? Of what?" "Of disappointing you. Again." The word hung between us. Again. As though disappointment was a pattern between my son and me. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. "I don't understand," I said carefully. Eliza took a deep breath. "Kevin talks about you constantly. Your brilliance, your determination, how you built your career while raising him alone. He admires you more than anyone in the world. But he's terrified of not measuring up, of making choices you wouldn't approve of." She glanced across the room to where Kevin was now helping fold chairs, like choosing social work over corporate law, like falling in love with a waitress working her way through grad school instead of someone from your world. I felt as though the floor had shifted beneath me. "Kevin is following the path he wants, not mine. I've never pressured him." "Not intentionally," Eliza agreed. "But he feels it all the same. The weight of your sacrifices, your expectations. Is that why he never told me about you? About the engagement?" She nodded slowly. "He was going to tell you tonight, after the party. We didn't plan to announce it to everyone. But when I saw him hesitate before the dance, saw the fear in his eyes, I couldn't let him keep hiding who he is and what he wants because he's afraid of letting you down." I thought back to the moment on the dance floor, seeing it now through a different lens. Not a deliberate humiliation, but a clumsy attempt to protect my son from his own fear of disappointing me. "He's not going to practice corporate law, is he?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Eliza shook her head. "He's accepted a position with the Legal Aid Society, working with immigrants seeking asylum. It's what he's passionate about." A memory surfaced. Kevin at 14, arguing passionately at dinner about immigration policy after a school project. How had I missed that this remained his passion? Had I been so focused on the path, I thought best that I'd failed to see the one he was actually walking. "I see," I said softly, feeling the ground shifting beneath years of assumptions about my relationship with my son. Across the room, Kevin was watching us now, concern evident in his expression. I motioned for him to join us. He approached cautiously, glancing between Eliza and me. "Everything okay?" "Eliza was just telling me about your job with legal aid," I said, watching his face carefully. Kevin paled slightly. "Mom, I was going to tell you. I know it's not what you expected." "It's exactly what I should have expected," I interrupted gently. "It suits you perfectly." Confusion replaced anxiety on his face. "You're not disappointed?" The question broke my heart a little. "Kevin, the only thing that disappoints me is learning that you've been afraid to share your life with me, that somehow I made you feel you couldn't be honest about what you want." He sank into a chair opposite us. "It's not your fault. You sacrificed everything to give me opportunities. I just didn't want to seem ungrateful by not taking advantage of them the way you might have hoped. The opportunities were never meant to be a burden," I said, reaching across to take his hand. "They were meant to give you choices. If I somehow made you feel they came with conditions, then I'm the one who should apologize." Silence fell between us, heavy with years of unspoken fears and assumptions. Finally, Kevin spoke again. "There's more you should know," he said, looking at Eliza for encouragement. "We're moving to Arizona next month. Eliza's been offered a position with a non-profit that works with indigenous communities, and Legal Aid has an office in Phoenix that needs immigration attorneys. Arizona. Across the country. My son, who I'd imagined would settle somewhere in New York, perhaps eventually joining my firm as we'd occasionally discussed, was moving thousands of miles away. I took a deep breath, aware that my reaction in this moment mattered deeply. "Phoenix is beautiful in the winter," I said, "though you'll need to get used to the summer heat." Relief flooded Kevin's face. "You're not upset?" "I'll miss you terribly," I admitted, "but I'm proud of you, both of you, for following work that matters to you." Eliza reached over and squeezed my hand, genuine warmth in her eyes now. "We were hoping you might visit for Thanksgiving, meet my parents. They'll be flying in from Chicago." "I'd like that," I said, surprised to find I meant it. Daniel approached, apologetically informing us that the venue needed to close. As we gathered our belongings, Kevin hung back, walking beside me toward the exit. "Mom," he said hesitantly, "about the dance." I stopped, turning to face him fully. "It's all right. I understand better now." "No, it's not all right," he insisted. "That tradition means a lot to both of us, and there's still time." He nodded toward the nearly empty room, where the DJ was packing his equipment. "Hey, Mike, can we get one more song before you shut down?" The DJ looked up, then grinned. "For the graduate, sure thing." As the opening notes of "What a Wonderful World" filled the room once more, Kevin extended his hand to me. "May I have this dance, Mom?" My vision blurred with unexpected tears as I placed my hand in his. "I would be honored." As we moved across the floor, I was struck by how much taller he was now, how confident his leading had become since our awkward practice sessions in our small apartment living room before his high school prom. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you about Eliza sooner," he said quietly, "or about the job, or Arizona." "I'm sorry I made you feel you couldn't," I replied. He shook his head. "It wasn't you. Not really. It was the idea of you I built up in my head, this perfect, unstoppable force who never compromised on her dreams. I think I forgot sometimes that your dream was for me to find my own path, not just follow yours." "You always were too perceptive for your own good," I said, smiling through tears. As the song neared its end, I saw Eliza watching us, her expression soft. When our eyes met, she gave me a small nod that somehow conveyed both apology and understanding. "I like her," I told Kevin. "She's brave, exactly what you need." He laughed. "She reminds me of you, actually. Don't tell her I said that." The song ended, and Kevin embraced me tightly. Over his shoulder, I could see Eliza approaching with our coats. "Your apartment or mine for breakfast tomorrow?" Kevin asked as we separated. "Yours," I decided. "I want to get to know my future daughter-in-law better." Later that night, as I drove home alone, I thought about how differently the evening had unfolded from what I'd planned. The perfect graduation celebration had become something unexpected, a moment of painful but necessary revelation, the beginning of a new understanding between my son and me. At a red light, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. The woman looking back at me appeared somehow different than the one who had meticulously applied makeup that morning. Older in some ways, lighter in others. I had planned this night to celebrate an ending, the completion of my son's education, the fulfillment of the promise I'd made 23 years ago. Instead, it had become about beginnings. His career, his engagement, and perhaps most importantly, a new kind of relationship between us, one based on who he actually was, rather than who I'd assumed he should be. As the light turned green, I drove forward, no longer the mother who had been pushed aside at her son's graduation party, but the mother who had been given a chance to truly see her son for the first time in years. It wasn't the evening I had planned, but as I drove home, through the quiet New York streets, I realized it had become the evening we both needed.